Hello everyone, thank you so much for stopping by. Now today I'm doing part 2 of the My Monthly Hero November card kit, and I have a band-aid on, and I tried to doctor it up with some holiday washi tape, so excuse my band-aid. I hurt myself when I was cleaning my scissors, but we're going to start in with card number 6. Like I said, this is part 2, so we're going to do 6 through 10 today. I have a piece of cardstock here. This cardstock measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/2, and I'm going to put it in this snowflake embossing folder here. I just embossed that with my Big Shot machine, and then I have a piece of gold cardstock here. This is from my stash, and it is 3 1/2 inches by 4 3/4 inches. So that's going to be my little background for my snowflake panel. And then I'm going to use 3 of these tag dies. Now one of them I'm going to make a shaker, so I'm going to take the circle that you put on the inside and I'm going to die cut a window out of that ornament there. And then now we're going to do some stamping. I'm going to grab the Christmas bulb, and then I'm going to use the Golden Glitz ink that's from Delicata. It is a beautiful gold ink, and the camera doesn't pick up the really beautiful shine that it has, but it's very pretty. I'm just going to stamp one of the ornaments, and then I'm going to grab some scratch paper, and then I'm going to stamp the second one that has the window in it. Just using that same ink. The funny thing is when I stamp this, I grabbed the scratch paper, but it didn't even stamp on the scratch paper. Now if you asked me to do that again, I probably couldn't, but I thought that was pretty neat. So I have 2 of my Christmas bulbs stamped, and now I did this in part 1. I'm just taking my Versamarker pen, and I'm going to create a gold topper for my ornament. So I just drew on that top portion with my Versamarker, and then now I'm adding some gold embossing powder. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit with one of my paint brushes. And then I'm going to get my heat tool and melt that gold embossing powder there. I wanted the whole thing to be covered, so I just dipped it in again and then heat set it while it was still warm. And I'm going to do it one more time just so it's a nice thick ornament topper. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the second one. I'm going to heat it up, and then while it's still hot, dip it in there and then melt it again. And then just do it one more time. It's going to give me a nice thick gold topper. So there's my 2 ornaments. Okay, now we're going to build a shaker. So I have a piece of acetate here. Now this is a brand new acetate to me. I picked it up on Amazon, and it is from Judikins. It's called Embossable Window Plastic. So we're going to give this a try. I've never embossed on plastic before, so I wanted to see how this worked out. I'm using my anti-static powder tool here, and we're going to stamp the word joy, and then I'm going to use that same embossing powder from Nuvo. This is plastic gold, I believe. Yep. At first when I poured it on there, it had so much static on it, it stuck everywhere. But the more that I flicked on my acetate, it all came off, and I was pretty amazed. I think it did a great job. I think next time I'll use my anti-static powder pillow instead of the other one that I used for this. But it heat really well, and it didn't even warp it. So it was pretty inexpensive. If you'd like, I'll leave a link below to where you can check that embossing or embossable window plastic out. Now I'm going to use my tape runner and go around the edge of my shaker here. And then I'm going to add my acetate and just trim around it. And then I have some real thin foam tape. I'm going to just add some foam tape right behind it. Now I'm going to use some sequins to fill it up. These are sequins from Kennedy Grace. They're Chantilly Cream Sequin Mix, and they're beautiful, like a pearlish color. And so I just filled up my little shaker window, and I'm going to add the backing. right on top. And I'll leave a link below to the Kennedy gray sequins where you can find those. But it's a beautiful, beautiful colored sequins. So I have my 2 ornaments ready to go. Now we're just going to assemble our card. I have some gold twine here. I have this gold twine that happens to be from Stampin' Up. But I'm just going to thread it through the top of my bulb. I'm going to do that to both of them. And then I'm just going to pop this first one up with some dimensional adhesive squares. And then I popped the other one up as well. And then I just secured the twine behind that back panel with some double-sided tape. Now I'm going to take some foam tape and I'm going to lift up this panel here and place it on my gold panel. There we go. Now I wanted to take just a couple extra sequins and add them to that bulb behind the shaker, just to balance it out just a little bit. I think that looks very pretty and elegant. I did tie a little bow, and I'm going to secure it to the top of my Christmas bulb with a glue dot for both of them. Okay, so there's our panel. I'm just going to flip that over and I'm going to adhere it to a white card base. My card base is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch. It's a top fold card. And that is card number 6. Very simple, but I think very elegant. Very pretty. Okay, now we're going to move on to card number 7. For this card, we're using a 3.5 inch by a 4 3/4 inch panel here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this little string of stars, and it curves a little bit, but I'm going to straighten it out so it's a line. And I just used the grid on my block to help me keep it straight. And then I'm going to go in with more of that golden glitz ink that came in the kit and stamp 1 row right on the top. And then I'm going to ink up my stamp again, and then I am going to crisscross over the top portion and stamp to the left or the right side here, and I'm going to do the same thing to the left. So the corners are overlapping a little bit, but I wanted that that star string to go all the way down, so I'm taking some masking paper and I'm covering up my stamped stars there, and then I'm going to ink up my stamp again. I'm going to start off by stamping the bottom, and then I am going to use the line on my panel as a guide and just stamp right over the top of it so it looks like a continuous line. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the left side here. So you have a real pretty star border around this panel. And I was heavy-handed on those bottom 2 stars, but I wasn't worried about that because we're going to cover that up with the Christmas tree. But before we do that, we are going to stamp our sentiment. The sentiment for this card says "Merriest Wishes," and I'm just going to stamp it with my VersaFine ink towards the top here. Okay, now I'm going to take the white Christmas tree tag, and I just didn't do that quite yet. I'm taking the little itty bitty leaf flourish in the stamp set, and I'm going to add some greenery around that stamped panel there. I think that just adds a lot of pretty color. Now here's where I took the tag, the Christmas tree tag, and then I'm using some garden green ink from Stampin' Up. It's real pretty green, and I'm going to stamp that Christmas tree in the center of that Christmas tree tag. Now, just to embellish it, since there is a hole in the top, I'm going to use some of the green and white baker's twine that the stamps came wrapped up in with the November kit here. Just going to trim off the ends, and then I'm going to flip that over and add some dimensional adhesive behind there. And then that's going to cover up those stars that I was heavy-handed with. Okay, now we need some bells and whistles. So in my stash, I have these silver stars. They're like sequins, but they're stars. I'm going to add the stars on the Christmas tree. I'm going to cover up with those silver stars, just to give it a little shimmer. And then I have some honey gold Nouveau crystal drops. I'm going to go over all the little dots on the Christmas tree with those. So my Christmas tree has gold and silver on it. Now I'm going to go in just to add some silver around that panel, because we have the gold delicata ink. So I'm going in with some Nouveau crystal drops. These are silver moon dust. They're really pretty silver. And I should have put my panel on my card base first before I did that, but this worked out fine. I just added foam tape and adhered my panel. And that's it for card number 7. Now for card number 8. Okay, I wanted to do some, I love chalkboard. Okay, so I cut out a piece of, the snowflake with a piece of black cardstock. And then I want to take my snowflake stamp, and then this is unicorn ink from Hero Arts. It's a nice white pigment ink here. I'm going to stamp directly on top of that black cardstock, and it looks so much like chalk. I love the way this turned out. Okay, once I have that done, I'm going to grab my panel. This panel is 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's just barely shy of my card base here. Okay, now we're going to stamp the smaller snowflakes that are in the stamp set. There's 2 of the same sized ones, and then there's one small one. So I'm going to stamp all 3. Using that big snowflake as a guide, I'm going to just kind of position the smaller snowflake behind it and stamp it using that same ink. And I'm going to do corner to corner. I'm going to do that with all three of the snowflakes. So here you see where I stamped them at. And then I'm going to stamp my sentiment on a piece of black, strip of black cardstock. The sentiment for this card says warmest wishes. I think it goes perfect with the snowflakes. And I'm just going to go ahead and use the same ink. Okay, I'm going to trim down the ends. And then that's going to be our sentiment for this card. Now I'm going to add some dimensional adhesive behind my snowflake and behind the sentiment, and I'm going to place that in the center of my panel there. Now since I had these sequins on my desk, I'm going to add a few. These are still the Chantilly cream sequins from Kennedy Grace. I'm going to add a few here and there. After I added these, I did add a few in the center parts, just to balance it a little bit better. But I'm going in with my white gel pen, and I'm going to dot everywhere on that panel. And then I did the same thing. I should have lifted it up first, but this worked out fine. I just add foam tape and adhered my panel. And that's it for that card. Very simple, and I love the chalkboard look of this. Okay, now we're going to move along. For card number 9, I'm going to take my mini Misty here, and I have a piece of watercolor paper. This is the Tim Holtz watercolor paper, and I'm going to use the smooth side, and I'm going to stamp the star using my mini Misty here. I'm going to stamp it twice because I can't see where it's stamping. I'm going to use Versamark ink, and so this is make sure that I don't have to worry about it not stamping fully. I'm going to go over it with some crystal clear embossing powder from Nouveau, and I'm just going to melt that embossing powder. Okay, I think that looks very pretty. Once we get that done, I'm going to take some distress inks. I'm going to grab my craft mat here, and I'm going to be using picked raspberry, seedless preserves, and spice marmalade. I wanted to use 3 bright, vivid colors for this card. This is not a Christmas card. I thought it'd be fun to make a there's a sentiment in the stamp set that says happy everything, so I wanted to use some bright colors for that. I just added water to my distress inks, and then I just smushed my star right on top. And then I'm taking the panel that I had cut out and smushing it over those three colors as well. Now I dried it, and then I want to add a little bit more of the spiced marmalade. I wanted a little bit more orange on that panel. And that panel there is 3.5 inches by 4 3/4. And I just think the colors looked really neat. Now, once everything dried, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut out the star. I'm going to cut it out all the way to the edge to where I embossed. And that's just going to leave a little bit of color on the inside of that star. I took one of the star tags that came in the kit, and I'm going to use that for my backing for the star. I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to it, so I'm just adding some dimensional adhesive, and I'm going to place that directly on that white tag star there. Now the color was pretty concentrated on that one side, so I want to cover that up. So I think it looks good there, but I wanted to add a little bit more. So I'm taking 2 large glue dots and I'm going to stick them on that panel. And then in my stash I have some copper wire. It's very thin copper wire, and I think it's great accents for cards. So I'm just going to grab some and kind of just curl it up and then place it right over that those glue dots there. That's going to stick out right behind my star. It's very lightweight and I think it adds so much. I'm just going to adhere my star right over that. I think that looks wonderful. Now we need the sentiment. Since we have the copper wire, I thought it would be appropriate to use the Celestial Copper ink from Delicata that came in the kit. I'm going to stamp the sentiment. It says happy everything. And then just to make sure it was dry, I used my heat tool. I'm going to fishtail the ends of that little sentiment and place that right in the bottom. For my card base, it's just a white card base, 4 1/4, 5 1/2. I popped my panel up with some fun foam. It was a little bit warped, so fun foam helped keep it flat. And that's it for that card. I think it turned out very pretty. Now for card number 10, I wanted to use some craft paper. This is Nina Desert Storm craft paper. I cut out a panel, and this panel, I'm going to tell you the size, is 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. And I'm grabbing some ink. This is Island Indigo ink. It's real pretty blue ink from Stampin' Up. And then I'm also going to use the unicorn ink from Hero Arts. I'm going to start off by inking up that Christmas bulb with the unicorn ink, and I'm going to stamp it on that panel. I'm actually going to stamp that Christmas bulb 3 times. Okay. And then I'm going to clean off my stamp really good because I'm going to use that same bulb, and I'm going to stamp using my Island Indigo there. I like using my Stampin' Up! Inks for larger images because the ink pads are so big. I just stamped it on another piece of the craft cardstock, and then I didn't ink it up again. I just went from that piece of cardstock on the bottom to my panel, and then I'm going to ink it up and then stamp it again on my panel, so you can see the 2 different tones of blue that I have. This one was a full inked stamp, and I'm going to do one more full ink stamp. Now you'll see that when I go over the white, it lightens up, and I love the way that turned out. I think that turned out so pretty. All the different colors of blue, very different, but I think the white, the blue, and the craft just went really pretty together. I'm going to take the coordinating die and cut out that ornament there. And then I have I'm going to cut out a piece of vellum here. I'm going to cut out, this is like a 3/4 inch strip, maybe a 1/2 inch strip of vellum, a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to do some heat embossing. I want to use some silver embossing powder from Nuvo. This one is Classic Silver. I'm going to stamp the sentiment that says Merry Christmas using my Versamark ink. And then I went ahead and heat set that. And then I'm just going to place that towards the bottom and then fold in the sides there, flip it over and use my tape runner, and I'm just going to secure it so it stays put on my panel there. Now I'm going, I think that's going to look good there. I'm going this twine here, or actually it's jute cord. It's actually craft color. It matches my cardstock, and I'm just going to thread it through the top there. I wanted this card to be a little bit more on the organic side, so I'm going to pop this little ornament up with some foam tape. And place that right next to the sentiment, and then again I'm going to take those strings and wrap it around the back, just using some double-sided tape, and then I pop that panel up with some foam tape. I was going to adhere that to my card base, which is the same Nina Desert Storm card base, but then I thought I needed a white mat behind there. I thought it would really stand out. So I added some white cardstock behind there, and then I'm just going to place that on my card base. Now we need a bow, so I tied a double bow. I'm going to secure it to the top of my ornament with a glue dot. And then we need some bells and whistles. So I'm going to go in with some of those Nuvo Crystal Drops, the Silver Moon Dust, just adding a few dots over the ornaments, add a little silver, and then I have 2 shades of blue sequins for my stash. And I just wanted to add a few here and there. There's a light blue and then a dark blue. Kind of matches my stamping there. And that's it for that card. So that's card number 10. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and it gives you some different ideas on what to do with the kit. I'll leave part 1, if you missed it, at the end of the video. Here's a quick look at all 5 cards that I made. And I did leave close-up pictures at the end here. Have a fantastic day, guys. Thank you so much again for stopping by. And we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.